There is a specific moment most people have experienced, but few have examined carefully. You are sitting in a room. Nothing is wrong. There is no immediate threat. No one is in danger. No alarm is sounding. No crisis is unfolding in front of you. By every observable measure, the room is safe. And yet, the shoulders are slightly raised. The jaw is slightly tight. The breath is slightly shallow. Not the deep, slow, complete breath of a man at rest, but the partial breath of a man who is, at some level, still waiting. The heart is not racing. The muscles are not tensed for action. And yet, something in the body does not feel completely settled. There is a background hum, a low, persistent, barely noticed quality that has become so familiar, so constant, so woven into the fabric of daily experience, that the man sitting in that safe room does not notice it anymore. He has forgotten what the absence of it feels like. He thinks this is what relaxed feels like. It is not. This is what a persistent state of activation can feel like after it has been present long enough to become familiar. And in some men, repeated activation of the stress response may become one part of the physiological picture, contributing to elevated blood pressure. To understand what is happening and why, you need to understand how the stress response was designed to work versus how modern life has changed what it is asked to face. The stress response is exceptionally effective in the face of a threat that is immediate and demands action, a physical danger, a confrontation, a moment in which the body must mobilize quickly. Many acute threats contain something the body can recognize clearly: a beginning, an action, and an end. The danger passes, the exertion stops, the immediate demand recedes, and the systems involved in acute stress can move toward recovery. The key word is not ancient. The key word is resolution. The threat resolves. The body reads the resolution. The stress response winds down. Recovery begins. That cycle, activation, resolution, restoration, was the design. And in that design, stress was not the enemy. It was the engine. Temporary activation, followed by genuine recovery, followed by the body, stronger from the challenge, ready for the next one. Then something changed, not in the body, in the nature of the pressures. The body was asked to face the bill that does not disappear when it is paid. It is replaced by another. The job that is never quite secure, the relationship that is never quite resolved, the future that is never quite certain, the gap between the life being lived and the life the man knows he should be living. These pressures share one characteristic that separates them from the threats the stress response was designed for. Many of them do not have a clear endpoint. There is no moment where the body can signal to itself: the emergency is over, recovery can begin, and so the stress system is recruited again, not necessarily at the peak intensity of a genuine acute emergency, but often enough that activation becomes a repeated feature of daily life. One pressure recedes, another appears, the chemistry changes, the immediate response passes, and then the system is called again. This is one way chronic stress can take shape. Not one alarm, ringing forever, a system, repeatedly asked to respond. Here is why repeated stress activation matters to the cardiovascular system. Each time the stress response is recruited, heart rate can change. The force of cardiac contraction can change. Vascular tone can change. Stress hormones enter the circulation. The kidneys, the blood vessels, and the heart all participate in the response. One episode is not hypertension. One difficult week does not explain every elevated reading. But when chronic psychosocial stress becomes part of a man's life, month after month, year after year, the repeated biological responses to that stress may become one contributor within a much larger cardiovascular picture. Alongside genetics, age, kidney function, sleep, metabolic health, diet, body composition, and vascular change, stress is not the whole explanation, but neither is it imaginary. It has physiology, and that physiology can reach the cardiovascular system. Then there is cortisol. Cortisol is often called the stress hormone, but that description is incomplete. Cortisol is a normal, essential hormone. It follows a daily rhythm. It helps regulate energy availability, metabolism, immune activity, and the body's response to challenge. The problem is not cortisol. The problem is what can happen when the stress systems regulating cortisol are repeatedly recruited over long periods of time. Cortisol is regulated through a system known as the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. In plain language, the brain detects and interprets a challenge. Signals move through a hormonal chain, and the adrenal glands release cortisol in response. Under chronic stress, that system can become dysregulated. In some people, cortisol exposure may remain elevated. In others, the normal daily rhythm of cortisol can become altered. The pattern is not identical in every man, but prolonged disruption of the stress response system can have consequences throughout the body, including the cardiovascular system. Excess cortisol exposure can influence how the kidneys handle sodium. More sodium retained can contribute to greater fluid retention. Greater circulating fluid volume can contribute to higher pressure, but that is only one pathway. Excess cortisol exposure can also affect the tone of blood vessels and increase their responsiveness to other stress signals. Chronic stress has also been linked to endothelial dysfunction, changes in the inner lining of blood vessels that can affect how those vessels function. The relationship is complex, but the message is simple. Stress is not confined to the mind. The biology of stress reaches the vessels. Chapter 4 goes deeper into cortisol specifically, what it does beyond blood pressure, and why understanding it changes how a man sees everything that has been feeling harder than it should. Now, the specific difficulty of a pattern like this, when tension has been present for long enough, it can become familiar. The man may lose his reference point for what a genuinely settled state feels like. He does not necessarily notice the jaw, the shoulders, the restless sleep, the breath that remains high in the chest, the constant mental scanning for the next problem. These things become background, and when he relaxes, when he does what he thinks is relaxing, he may simply move from more activation to less activation and call that rest. This does not mean his body is incapable of recovery. It means the conditions that support recovery may not be appearing often enough, consistently enough, or for long enough. And that changes the question. The question is no longer, why can't I relax? The question becomes, what conditions have I repeatedly taught my body to live inside, and what would it take to change them? The path forward is not simply trying harder to relax, and it is not pretending. The pressures in a man's life do not exist. It is learning to change the conditions that repeatedly recruit the stress response. and building practices that support autonomic regulation, cardiovascular health, sleep, movement, and recovery. Not through willpower alone, not through positive thinking, through specific behaviors the body can actually respond to. That is what this series teaches. Not stress management as a vague instruction, stress resolution as a practical discipline, understanding the stressor, changing what can be changed, reducing repeated inputs that can be reduced, and deliberately creating the conditions that support recovery. Chapter 4. Cortisol, the hormone most men are drowning in, goes deeper into the specific system introduced in this chapter, what cortisol does beyond blood pressure, what it does to the brain, to the body's energy systems, to a man's capacity for clear thinking and sustained, focused work, and why the man who understands cortisol finally understands why everything has been feeling harder than it should. This is the silent current. Chapter 3, complete. Your body has been trying to tell you something. It is time to listen.